this is JC Vaughn, live at Comic-Con for Scoop and the Fandom Advisory Network. 2012 was a big year with Valiant, with their return to the comic book marketplace. And they've continued in 2013 with even more launches. We caught up with Dinesh Shamdasani, the Chief Creative Officer of Valiant, in their New York offices and asked him what's in store for the remainder of 2013 and beyond.
What were your earliest experiences as a Valiant fan?
Earliest experiences as a Valiant fan. So I grew up in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. There were not a lot of comic stores in Hong Kong. In fact, I don't think there was any at that point. I had my business partner here, Jason Katari, who is our vice chairman. His father used to go back and forth for business, and he would always bring this suitcase full of comics back. And so Jason was a comic fan. I wasn't even reading comics. And he would give a comic to each of his friends, but one free, and then the rest you have to get from him. So I got a copy of my first Valiant comic was X-Men War number 6, and it blew my mind because I was a huge movie fan. But that book was these two guys in suits of armor fighting each other. And I hadn't read Iron Man. I didn't even know what Iron Man was at that point. And it was crazy because this is the kind of thing that you didn't get anywhere else. You didn't get in video games, you didn't get on television, cartoons, movies. It was a different kind of storytelling, comic book storytelling. And I just ate it up.
What, other than the characters being in armor and duking it out, what grabbed you about it?
There was an excitement with Valiant. We did get Wizard magazine. That was a big influence on everybody. Wizard magazine would talk about this strange American pop culture that was becoming incredibly popular in the 90s because of the Death of Superman and all the gimmicks and the baseball trading card market coming into comics. So there was an excitement, there was like electricity, and more so it seemed to be on Valiant. And then as you started reading the books, there was something a little bit deeper, at least to my 12-year-old psyche, with those books. They seemed to be touching issues that were ignored in other things promoted to someone of that age. So in X-Men War, for instance, there's a man who's out of time who's tackling issues of how the world has changed. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? He's holding a mirror. His barbaric nature holds a mirror up to our society, and it gets you thinking about why do we act the way we do? Is that the best course of action? So it was an interesting dynamic. At the same time, you've got guys beating each other up, which is fun.
You've got a great issue there, X06.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, all those early issues, there's just something that grabs you about each of them. But other than that, considering your early Valiant collecting as a whole, do you have a favorite issue or story?
Yes, I do. But it's interesting. I didn't get to read it until several years later. So there weren't any comic shops in Hong Kong. So the first one opened, I think, around the time Bloodshot 1 hit the stands, and we were able to get all the books from that. But we never got the early Valiant books, the ones that really built the company, the pre-Unity issues. And it wasn't until I came to the U.S. To go to USC that I was able to jump onto eBay, and at that point nobody was looking at the Valiant books, so they were crazy cheap. And I read Magnus, Robot Fighter, the first arc that Valiant put out, the first story, the first Magnus story, and it was so fascinating because it starts exactly where, and I didn't know this at the time, but it starts where Russ Manning left off. Yeah. Where you have.
So it basically started like it was number 22.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and the archetypes are the same. You have a kind of archetypal hero in Magnus who isn't very complex. Leisure is simply the damsel in distress. The villains are mustache twirling. The evil robots are evil. And then over the course of 4 issues, everything changes and the characters evolve. It was a very smart thing they did. They didn't reboot it. They just evolved it over one arc.
Without contradicting what had come before.
Yes.
To me, that makes it much more compelling because they're not rejecting what was before.
Yes, and you're going on the journey with them. So you, from Magnus's point of view, you see him as the savior of humanity, and then you start to question it, and then he starts to question it, and then you start to change your opinion, and he starts to change his opinion. It's a very, very difficult thing to do in storytelling, but they did a great job. They
did. Other than Valiant at that time, did you get into anything else, comic book wise?
Yeah, certainly. No, I was reading all the big DC books, the Death of Superman, the Breaking of Batman, the Green Lantern arc where he goes nuts. I was picking up everything that Venom had that was coming out of Ghost Rider, all the stuff that you try not to admit now, Punisher, anything he was in, Wolverine, I bought all the Marvel trading cards, Comics Greatest World, all that stuff, because I had no taste. But to be honest, I still love it. I still have it all somewhere.
What is there any of it you look at that it really still resonates with you other than the Valiant stuff?
I think a lot of it still resonates. I think that certainly the storytelling is a little simplistic and of its time, but there's a lot that they got right. I think that there's an excitement in all those books. There's consequence to the storytelling in those books, which is something that maybe we could do better now. There's an interesting marketing point of view where it just felt like everything was optimistic and everything was about the tropes of the genre, but getting back to what they meant, instead of it, knowing now that it was a reaction to what happened in the 80s, the dark period of anti-heroes, I think that's what resonated with me, and I think a lot of the people of my generation, it's just these were superheroes being superheroes.
Right.
And so that still resonates.
Good. All right. Now, from the end of the original Valiant, let's say the end of the Acclaim era, to where before you guys came out, what did your passion for Valiant characters fade at all? Did you get occupied with school? How did your collecting career go?
I
from
certainly
there?
was in and out. I was in the 90s, and then as everyone left, I left. Was in school, came to college in America, USC, and then jumped on eBay just to get the issues I never had. You know, you see them in Wizard magazine or up on a wall for $100, and then now you can finally own it. So I got it, and then I decided I'd read it, and that got me back into comics. So since about 2000, I've just been reading everything, catching up, everything I missed. I read all of Preacher and everything Warren Ellis has done, and We3, and all that stuff. It was nice. Sandman. So I started to read comics as opposed to collect comics or get excited about them.
What were the steps that led to you guys being able to acquire the characters?
A lot.
Obviously, the first step is Acclaim goes bankrupt.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what happens from that point?
So it was very fortuitous. So at the time that I was getting back into comics, it was the same period in which Acclaim was faltering. The core business was faltering. They put out some real clunkers. They lost some sports licenses. So I was paying attention from an industry standpoint, from a business standpoint, to what was happening with Acclaim, and it was just fascinating because I was looking and wondering where these characters would go because they had this potential. At the same time, I was working in Hollywood, and I noticed that there was something happening with Spider-Man coming out, the first X-Men, and these movies doing so well, and everyone I was working with didn't understand why. To me, it was obvious. Of course, X-Men's going to open at 56 million. You've got Wolverine popping his claws, and you can hear it for the first time. There's millions of fans to be waiting to hear that, and everyone I was working with, they didn't understand it. So I started to look at that, and Acclaim went bankrupt. There was actually a rumor. There was a rumor that Film Roman had bought the Valiant assets for, I think, $50,000, and that really pissed me off because I knew that I could raise that. I mean, for those assets, what a discount! What a deal! And so I called Jason, and he was an entrepreneur out in Philadelphia at that point, and I knew he was a massive Valiant fan. So I called him and I said, we should do this. We should. When I found out it was just a rumor, we should look into the auction. We should do the due diligence. It would just be fascinating from a fan standpoint to see what happened, and also we'll learn something. And it just spiraled from there, and we started to get excited about the opportunity that was in front of us. We started to be able to raise more money than we thought, and we went to the auction and actually lost. But,
You lost?
Yeah, we lost. We came in second. There was only 3 bidders. It's fascinating. So a lot of the documents, for the due diligence documents, were quote unquote lost during the due diligence period because the CEO of Acclaim was bidding on the assets. His brother ran the law firm that did all of Acclaim's legal work, and somehow in the middle they got lost. I don't know what happened. I can guess, but I don't know what happened. So he went to the auction, and he seemed armed with information. We had to call every former executive we could find, like Walter Black, who's our head of operations,
Sure.
or Barry Levine, who was doing some work for Acclaim. He now runs Radical Studios. So we met all these guys, called them, talked to them about what could have been in those documents to try and form a valuation. Went into the auction, beat the CEO of Acclaim, the former CEO, came second to a man who was a former from Marvel, marketing manager at Marvel. He won the assets immediately once the auction was announced. A fourth party who didn't come to the auction announced that they had filed intent to use trademark applications. Now these never would have held up, but it would have taken about 3 years for the USPTO to look at the application, to realize that they don't have the copyrights, can't use the applications, and therefore reject them, so the proper owners can come in. He didn't want to spend what he called 2 years and $1 million legal fight.
Yeah.
We thought we were smarter than him, came in, negotiated a reduced price for the assets, thought we could do this in less than 2 years and $1 million, spent 2 years and $1 million fighting this legal battle, won the legal battle, brought Peter Cooney on board, who was the former CEO of Marvel. He's our chairman, huge help to us. It's actually funny, the first thing that I did when we got the assets, got a hold of the Harvard Business case study called Peter Cooney on the Marvel Story, and it's about this thick, and it's how Peter and the team at Marvel, there's a lot of guys involved, brought Marvel back from bankruptcy.
Sure,
the
because
company
a lot of people don't think about this in the light of today, about how on the precipice they were.
Yes. I mean, they were done. It was a Hail Mary pass, and that incredible team managed to bring it to the place that it is now, and then sell it to Disney. And that's actually the best thing that happened to us, is the sale of Marvel to Disney. It freed up people like Peter to come and do the next thing. So we got this Harvard Business case study, and we built our business plan around it. And then fast forward 3 or 4 years, and there's Peter Cunio working with us as our chairman. It was a little surreal.
While you